DNC may not be willing to run a debate for the Democratic nomination, so the Young Turks decided they would host exactly that. Biden opponents Marianne Williamson, Cenk Uygur, and Dean Phillips appeared together in a live stream debate last night to discuss their views on the issues, the Republican debate, and how they saw the DNC as afraid of letting them debate Biden. Here's Williamson saying just that.
First of all, it's exactly what Cenk said. It's that the president doesn't feel he needs to say anything because he knows that he has a machine that's taking care of business for him. And that's a problem. And that is the DNC and how the whole party operates in state after state after state, making sure we're not on the ballots, making sure that we're not debating the president, et cetera. And everything that Cenk said was true. We need to be out there talking about our counter narrative to the Republicans. We need to talk about what the Democrats stand for in 2024. What does Biden say other than finish the job?
And here's a bit of Phillips responding to Nikki Haley criticizing Ron DeSantis' parental rights and education bill, known more broadly as Don't Say Gay.
One of the first statements I heard from Nikki Haley is accusing Ron DeSantis of his Don't Say Gay bill of not going far enough. That's Nikki Haley saying this. You guys, I got to tell you, I just don't get it. I wish I did. I don't understand the lack of compassion. The lack of love, the lack of understanding, the lack of basic human decency, and the fact you have candidates on the GOP right now who are fighting harder and harder to be more mean-spirited than the other. I just don't get it.
And finally, here's Cenk Uygur on Donald Trump and abortion.
Donald Trump's a guy who cost us Roe v. Wade. So the idea that he'd be a moderate on abortion is absurd. And he's only doing that because he's a slimy con man. After he destroys women's rights to choose, now he's going to pretend that he's a moderate on the issue. But the problem with Democrats a lot of times, like Joe Biden, is that they never fight back. So Joe Biden should be out there pummeling Donald Trump on costing women the right to choose. But I haven't heard one word. I haven't heard one word in that regard. Oh, he starts every speech with my Republican friends. Sorry, but I don't have Republican friends. So it's not to say that we're not going to deliver for Republican voters. We are. When we raise wages, their wages are going to go up. When we lower truck prices, their truck prices are going to go down. But when you talk about Republican politicians, sorry, I'm not with these guys.
But before Cenk started talking, I was going to say that the tone is just so different from the Republican debate. I do think there's something to just that being characterized by a lot of negativity, whether you think it's good or healthy or not. It was definitely very combative and negative, the Republican debate, versus what you're seeing on this side of the aisle. I think it was a really good idea for them to do it. I think the programming choice to do it the same night of the Republican debate was a tough one. I planned to watch it, but I confess even I didn't have the bandwidth to watch both last night. And I also, I mean, you're hurt by the raw optics of it. You have all of the money of the Republican Party to put on a glossy, glamorous debate with famous questioners and hosts and all of that. And Cenk Uygur with Young Turks being probably the most establishment, I just mean in terms of funding and structure, outlet on the left. I'm glad that they put this on and facilitated it, but it's not in person. It doesn't have the same kind of energy.
Why couldn't they get him in the same room?
I have no idea. I mean, lots of times it's money issues on the left, but given the priorities, I mean, Dean Phillips is a multimillionaire who's largely self-funding his own campaign.
He's a Congress member, so he's here sometimes in DC. Marianne is here.
I don't know that. I don't think that Cenk is here. I think that the studios are in New York or California, maybe.
But he's doing a book tour. He could.
Sure. I completely agree with you. But another point, another interesting aspect of this is, you know, whether or not the priorities for Republican voters were being addressed in the Republican debate. When you look at how much inflation in the economy is dominating headlines right now, did you hear anything prospective about how to deal with inflation or to raise wages or anything like that at the Republican debate?
Certainly not raising wages, no. I mean, the Republican idea is to lessen government spending and that will bring down inflation.
Sure. So you didn't hear anybody address kitchen table pocketbook issues for Americans at the Republican debate. And I do think that Marianne makes a really good point, which is that in the absence of a Democratic primary process, in the absence of a Democratic debate, you don't hear what the competing plans are that Democrats have on offer to what Republicans are saying. So they get to operate in a kind of a void where I think the only reference to healthcare at the Republican debate last night was Ron DeSantis saying something about how we have a sick care system and not a health care system. Well, Marianne has used that exact same line, but her plan to address it is to have a single-payer Medicare for all system, which 49% of Republicans support and 88% of Democrats support. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis, I think, was appropriately kind of deemed by one of the hosts last night for having, I think, the second lowest healthcare coverage state in the entire union. And those are the contrasts that aren't made clear when you don't actually have a competitive Democratic primary where Democratic candidates are being encouraged to put forward their alternative view to what could make America a better place.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did at one point by then I had started writing the radar I did today, so I had tuned out the last part of the debate. I think they did get into their plans a little bit, but I can't recall what they said about what their health care plans
More
would be,
important is whether or not Vivek Ramaswamy was effective in holding up a piece of paper that said, like, Nikki Haley equals.
Well, I mean, okay, you can call it theatrics, but foreign policy is a big issue, and that is part of what he was going after her on. And DeSantis, Christie, Nikki Haley, and Vivek there are differences between them on these important foreign policy issues.
What are the differences? Are they more? Because look, let's talk about that a little. Because one of the big moments was Vivek saying, oh, you can't name 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine. Now, I think that's a little bit of a trap because everybody can name the 2 Donbass provinces. That's what everybody talks about constantly. I think 3 is, let me Google a third, and then I got a gotcha for everyone else on stage. But is that substantive policy analysis? Now, I agree that we shouldn't send troops to Ukraine. I'm not entirely confident that Vivek has really firmly articulated vision of what he would not do from a foreign policy perspective, given how he spoke to us when he was on the show the last time, seeming not to be willing to commit to actually cutting funding to a place like Israel. But I do worry that substantive policy debates are easier to turn into theatrics about who can name how many provinces in Ukraine, when again, there isn't a alternative argument being made for the political party that represents half the country.
You can dislike or disagree with the stance he's taken on Israel or whatever else. I think on Ukraine he's been pretty clear and pretty consistent in saying he doesn't think it's a major U.S. foreign policy concern, that we shouldn't have sent the money and we should stop sending the money, that he is supportive of finding a peace deal, and what he says on that issue is very different from Nikki Haley and Chris Christie, and then Ron DeSantis has kind of straddled the line. I think he's the one where he's saying the things about Ukraine that he knows the base wants to hear, but I'm not sure the commitment is actually ideological for him.
But look what happened when we pressed him on Israel. Like he said, when asked, he said America has to respect its promises. We have to respect our commitments to Israel, and that's why I wouldn't change our funding structure while I'm president. How is that any different from what he might say to Ukraine? Okay, as a non-president, I don't think we should be funding Ukraine. But if he were to become president, did we have to respect our commitments to the $100 billion that they are unable to get through right now, but the $100 billion commitment that they're trying to push through to Ukraine? I mean, we didn't have an opportunity to push him on that, and most journalists don't. But that's my only concern about Vivek.
Okay, I agree with you that he's said a lot of different things, some of them contradictory about Israel and about other issues. I think he's been very consistent on Ukraine, more so than but I don't trust, frankly, any political figure to implement the non-interventionist foreign policy I want if elected, because Donald Trump and Joe Biden both talked about having a less interventionist foreign policy and then failed in multiple ways. There's something about the office or the power of the bureaucracy, or what some people call the deep state, to still get the bipartisan consensus through. So I'm not here like preaching the gospel of Vivek to save us all or something.
I agree. Most of them are bad.
All of them.
I agree with that, except for I would say I probably would trust Cornel West to have a non-interventionist foreign policy.
Okay.
He's the only one.
Let's see if he got the power. What would happen? I don't know. Why wasn't he there? Oh, because this is internal to the Democratic Party. Yeah, I think it would be interesting to see
Jill Stein as well. Don't want to leave her out.
Sure. More Rising right after this.